Hi everyone. So I will be continuing on with part number 2 for chapter number 3, practical considerations in using data. And my name is Alejandra. So picking up where Ellie left off, we will be starting off for part 2, the intentional guidance or closing the gap action plans. So when we're looking at intentional guidance, looking at activities that refer to closing the gap because they are designed to close identified gaps in achievement between two groups of students. And so some of these gaps could be high school completion rates, college entrance and retention rates, and high school GPA. So when you're thinking about closing the gap, and intentional guidance is you are going to be comparing two groups. So a group that has higher rates than the targeted group. So for example, if I'm looking at intentional guidance for high school completion rates and I look at my, let's say 12th graders, and I see that Caucasian students are completing high school at higher rates than Latinx and African American students, then comparing those two groups and closing that achievement gap. Part of the intentional guidance on closing the achievement gap also includes disaggregating data to uncover equity and access issues. So school counselors do need to design intentional activities to specifically address those concerns. So some of these questions that school counselors can ask is, are all groups of students attending college at the same rates? Are all groups of students completing four-year plans at the same rate? So again, disaggregating data. So when you are looking closing an achievement gap, really disaggregating it by gender. You can disaggregate it by ethnicity, by socioeconomic backgrounds of the student to really look at a more holistic view and uncover the equity and access issues when using intentional guidance to close achievement gaps. And lastly, target identified needs by using data to determine what the student needs are. So again, you're going to target those needs that the student has by identifying what they are. So moving on to the next slide. Oops, I skipped one. Creating an action plan with an evaluation in mind using process, perception, and result data. So I put this diagram here from the textbook, which is located in page number 45. And this diagram is something, it should look somewhat familiar. It's actually the same diagram or graph that Professor Solis shared with us that first day of class that we met in person. So looking at the process data, perception data, the behavior change of the student, and then the results data here. So I'm just going to give you an example. So let's say for the process data, which includes the who, what, when, where, and how long. So let's say the guidance curriculum of the school counselor is to target 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So that's the who. The what would be to present a group counseling session. Let's say it's 8 sessions regarding study skills. So let's say for this example, we are trying to target students who maybe have a low GPA in a particular class. Let's say maybe their math class. There's certain students that have, they're not 80% of students are not passing that particular math class. So this would be when it takes place. Is it going to be taking place during class time, elective? Is it going to take place during when the math class meets, or before or after school? Where are the study skills going to be taking place, and then how long? Now, next, looking at the perception data, we're going to look at competency attainment data by the student. So what attitudes were changed for the student? What skills were learned, and what knowledge did they learn? So using the study skills group counseling sessions as an example again, so using that same one, changing the students' attitude. So having them believe that doing their homework matters, right? That doing their homework consistently will improve their class and they will pass their class and improve their overall GPA. So also changing their attitude to help students believe that using the study strategies that are being presented in the study skills group sessions are important and that they need to be applying them in their math class and hopefully the other classes as well. Next, skills. So what skills are they going to be learning during those study sessions? So maybe they're accurately filling out an assessment planner. They're learning how to calculate a GPA. They're learning maybe particular math skills in those sessions, and then knowledge. So knowing the best places, times, and ways to study. So when they're, maybe doing chapter one in their math class, making sure that they have a really good place to study that is free of distractions. Knowing the promotion and retention criteria, and knowing where to seek help tutoring. So in the study skill session, the tutoring won't actually be provided, but just allowing the student to know that knowledge that there is tutoring on campus for that math class and where they can seek that resource. And so again, the attitude, skills, and knowledge that they learn in the study skills will change the student behavior, which will lead to higher attendance rates, higher homework completion. So higher homework completion, and that in turn will lead to the students passing the math class and lead to graduation, higher grade point averages, higher graduation rates, and also higher state standardized tests. And so again, when we're looking at evaluating the data using processes, perception, and results data is very, very important. And this diagram does a really good job at showing you. And again, I do recommend that you look back at that handout that Professor Solis gave us, because he does actually provide examples in there as well. And moving on to, oops, not quite there yet. The second to last slide is looking at data over time. And there's three ways to look at data: immediate, intermediate, and long range data. So immediate data, as it says in the name, is looking at data immediately. So looking at feedback immediately. So if we're using, again, that study skill session, group counseling session, the counselor can do a pre-test or a post-test pre-test before the counseling session, post-test after the counseling session, to see if what was the impact on the student's attitude, skills, or knowledge. Intermediate data can be conveyed in terms of a quarter, trimester, or semester. So let's say after a semester, after those study skills group counseling sessions were implemented, all students that participated, you can take a look at that math class after the semester and see what their grades are, and see results in that way. In their achievement data. And then the last one is long range data, which reviews kind of more like long-term, a year. So looking at important patterns, trends, and discrepancies in the data. And that again can be discovered by analyzing the data over a year. So again, looking at the target population over a year, looking at that math class, seeing how many students passed the class, looking to see if maybe those study skills also affected them positively in those other classes besides the math class. And that is it for chapter 3. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Kelly and myself. Have a good one.